I'm the founder director of the Lahore Biennale Foundation. We do a lot of environment-related work. In Feb 2024, we'll be doing a ecological climate biennial and a ecological summit in Lahore. मुझे एक बात बताएं. अच्छा, just tell me one thing. Why are we, the government, so afraid of doing a vehicular health check? I mean, talking about low-hanging fruit. This is something that I've been actually working very hard towards. That just a general vehicular health test. We understand the big, automobile and other industry. We understand other things, but this is just like a simple thing that they can do.
No, I think, well, it looks like a cliched response. We are really working on it. And I think the government has also come to the same conclusion after quite some time, the conclusion that you are actually alluding to, that's a low-hanging fruit. It's not very complicated. The latest on that, which I can tell you, and this is not even 24 hours old, is that the Transport Department, first of all, was thinking of doing it on its own, so as a very big, type of a project. The problem with that is that the government itself is very wary of going into these big projects because we are slow and the implementation process is more complicated. So right now what they are thinking is really that these big vehicle dealers or these brand names as far as automobile manufacturers are concerned, we can outsource them, or we can sort of outsource this vehicular health check to them, make it mandatory on a certain number of vehicles every year. But that is something that has been, so there is no debate about it, about the utility of it, about the fact that that is one of the easiest things to do. And once you start doing it, then you start actually looking at the issue of retiring vehicles. Right now, you cannot retire a vehicle because you just do not know what that vehicle is contributing as far as the air quality is concerned. Obviously, an older vehicle would emit more, more of these emissions, but there is no such policy of actually retiring old vehicles. And this idea of going to a doctor and having your health check is something that we want to apply to vehicles also. For the past several years, we tried to do it on our own. So, but that project proposal never could see the light of the day. Now, the latest on that, and I think we are discussing it, with the bank as of yesterday, is that let's not do it ourselves. Let's outsource it, because everywhere else in the world, it's not the government which is actually trying to do it. You can give a certification or a license to somebody to actually do it, and you can establish standards for it. Monitor those inspectors that you have outsourced these services, and perhaps we can actually work on that. But Kutsia, to be very frank, the government really needs a lot of help, and not help in the sense that we need help in structuring this whole thing, because structuring an outsourcing arrangement in the government will also involve some months of work, definitely. That how do you sort of negotiate it? What would you do as far as monitoring and standardization of this thing is concerned? And if anybody can help from outside the government, that is more than welcome. But point well taken. The entire government substructure.
This is something we've been working on for quite some time, but every time, and that we work with all kinds of health secretaries and environment secretaries and ministries and those kind of things. But it's just one of those things that it's just one of those easy things, but nobody wants to touch it.
Okay.
I mean, but that's fine. I don't want to go into debate on it. It's just one opinion that I was.
Let me add a dimension to it, and I think Hassan, from next time when we show these slides, I want a slide on the turnover of the Transport Secretary and the Environment Secretary in the last 3 years.
Yes.
I've been in the urban unit for 3 years, and I've seen 6 Environment Secretaries and I think 4 Transport Secretaries. It's not that nobody wants to work on it. you need to give them time to actually work on it, establish a team around it. Every time the secretary changes, it's back to square one. And it is Groundhog Day as far as transport is concerned. It's the same day being repeated again and again. The new secretary comes, he starts from square one. He will actually present it. By the time he's ready to actually get it approved, he's changed. And then the new secretary come, and the same thing sort of rinse and repeat. Uh, you know, that is one issue which is an issue on the government side, and I think nobody highlights that. And I think we need to highlight a consistent government policy and a permanent, consistent team at all levels of government, at the federal, at the provincial, and even at local government levels. That please do not change them so frequently. I think that would also contribute a lot in terms of policy implementation.
We have the regulator right here. I saw the hands. I'll come back to you. But we have friends from the EPD here too. So I was just wondering if any of you would want to sort of there's a lot of stuff happening at the EPD these days with the World Bank, Green Development Fund, etc. So if you could sort of tell us a bit about the momentum that you've generated and what's the new work that you guys are engaged in.
Have some informed decision making. Basically, I would refer to the first policy when Dr. Pervez Hassan was making some groundbreaking in 2017, 2016, when the civil society's momentum was getting its climax, and Lahore High Court was also driving this campaign. He broken the ground without any proportionate of the contributing factors. And I guess in 2017, the smog policy, later on, I have the privilege to write, being the lead author of Punjab Clean Air Policy, which we recently promulgated in 2023. The evidence is supplemented by the FAO, then a wonderful evidence by the urban unit. I really respect and refer at various forums that is the true picture, and that is substantiated by the Peshawar study which Dawar was exhibiting over there. The proportionate, when we decouple the rural communities with the urban constituencies, comes out very identical and the similar fashion. For example, transport, urban unit disclosed that it is around more than 80%, and the same with the Peshawar. And there was a little bit difference due to the behavioral and some living standards of the Lahore and Peshawar, which was about the contribution of the domestic sector. So, particularly coming to the question of Samuel, that how the regulator sees all these discussions, it is really true that we were in search of the evidence, but honestly, we have a bunch of information and the evidence at hand, luckily supported by the urban unit from the government side. Now we are looking for the solutions, smarter solutions. Those have some causal relation. Either I am going to implement this specific intervention, either it is going to cause some reduction in the pollution levels. Here I and Umar have the opportunity to listen the World Bank. They come up with one model that they establish the causal relation that if you are going to implement this intervention, it will be reducing this much of the pollution. So such sort of the causal relationing models or the instruments are required at the government level. Like he also rightly mentioned that the turnaround and the other secretaries don't take interest when he is pretty sure about, while paying attention to his incumbency board, that I will not be residing or serving for more than 6 months. So he will be not taking and making some decisions. Those are of the long term and they inviting some sort of the investment. So in this situation, we would request and we are looking forward towards the triple P mod, if they could make some intervention and the society takes lead, some investors and some other genius minds could make collaboration with the government agencies and having some, no doubt, financial incentivization is the core of all policy implementation. But for that, since 2 to 3 years being engaged with the Punjab Green Development Program, which is the $273 million program, the government of Punjab has negotiated and implementing with the financial assistance of the World Bank. So from that, such sort of the arrangements are not a big deal for the government, but what actually is, what type of the technical solutions and the techniques and strategies we are going to negotiate with them. Either they are yielding or they are only for the sake of capacity building in terms of multiplying our HR and some promulgating some policy instruments. So what we really looking for is, if you people, you researcher, you genius mind could advise us that this is the practically and specific buyer, because to control transport sector, bring mass transit, yes, it is pretty good. And we are bearing in our mind since 2017, since the Dr. Pervez Hassan unveiled an innovative policy for tackling the smoke. So for referring and also invoking the Punjab Clean Air Policy, this is the policy which the government has given the challenge to its own self. It is the different policy than the other national and the provincial policies. By how it differentiates with the other one is, it is bearing some quantitative target with the time bindings. The government has to reduce the concentration of this particular pollutant by this year. So I guess for this, we will be, once again, I am reiterating that we will be more interested about specific interventions and their proportionate of the impact which we can cause. Thank you. Okay. Right now, they are strengthening from the two dimensions right now. On regulatory or the governance side, and the second is from green investment. They are mobilizing some funds. Only that is only a piloting stage, not on the bulk or the that is sort of the endowment fund.
So, my 2 cents on the World Bank thing is that, it's like a buffet of all type of intervention. So what I would subscribe to their point of view, and I think we have discussed it internally within the government in the last couple of years, is let's set a target. Just set a target for Lahore that we need to bring it down, and now there is enough of remote sensing and otherwise data which can sort of show whether that effort has been achieved or not. We really need to push this thing forward rather than an experimental approach, in the sense that we will have an endowment fund, we will do some regulatory interventions, then there is a lot of HR which is being recruited because it is being felt that the footprint of the Environment Protection Department is not well structured as far as the province is concerned. But my question again would be that why do you need a provincial Environmental Protection Department? Why can't we invest more at the local government level? I sort of missed that slide absolutely, and that really should have been included. But if you look at the history of environment or air quality or anything, you have a lot happening at the federal level with the Ministry of Climate Change, and it has, that sort of event making has increased in the last several years. There's a lot of drive at, at the federal level. Some of it is getting trickled down at the provincial level, but below the provincial level, it's absolutely silence. Now, the choice for us is, do we have a provincial government department as far as the environment is concerned looking at air quality, or should we start thinking, at least for the major cities, to enable their local government institutions to start thinking about air quality? That is a much more grounded effort. That's the advantage of it. It may take a little bit more time, but I think their impact would be greater because they would have a stake in the city. The Environment Protection Department does not have a stake in Lahore, So whenever there is an elected local government, or whenever there is even an administrator for the local government, that individual is more responsive to air quality issues, say, than the Environment Protection Department, or even the urban unit, or the Ministry of Climate Change in Islamabad. So, I think we we really need to also look at how we have structured it so far as delivery on the ground is concerned. We have missed the boat as far as aligning local government priorities with air quality is concerned. You look at any local government legislation, it's a line and a half on air quality and environment control. Local government will be responsible for environment control. That's the word which is mostly used, environment control. What do we mean by environment control? You know, there's no further definition to it, there's no further work on it. Now, when we talk about Peshawar and Lahore, one would think, what is the local government of Peshawar and Lahore doing, or what is the administrator as far as the municipal corporation of Lahore or the municipal corporation of Peshawar is thinking about it? They don't have anything. They don't have an agenda for it because the agenda has not been forwarded to them. The agenda is still percolating between the federal and the provincial level. And it's very hard to tackle environmental issues from a federal and a provincial level. Some major regulatory changes, yes, but when it comes to implementation on the ground, you really need to have local government partnership. Thank you.
There were two hands here, so we'll go there first and then I'll come back to you, and then I have my eyesight. So please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Rimal, and until recently I was working with Amnesty International looking at the sort of human rights dimension to the entire sort of campaign around air quality control. And, you know, I'm really, I'm interested to hear what the two of you think, because, you know, I'm quite pleased to see that people actually care about this, and that's something that you found, that your data reveals, and that's definitely something that's sort of cropped up again and again on any sort of public advocacy efforts for air quality control, which is that people really, really do care. And I think that unfortunately, people, and this is something that we struggled on any campaign that we've developed on this, was that people really want to know what they can do. And, you know, I hear from the EPD as well, which is that, you know, everybody's asking for specific interventions, specific steps. And I understand that there is, you know, a difference between what public servants can do and what the public can do. But I think that, you know, this is also a very difficult conversation to have, because there's a lot of education that's required. Like you said, you have to explain what PM 2.5 is, you have to explain what emissions are. And frankly, the local sort of regional vocabulary for this conversation simply doesn't exist. You don't have, you know, I mean, what is Mausami Tabdili, what is greenhouse, how do I tell them what an emission is, right? So I guess, you know, and this is something that keeps cropping up in all of these conversations around air quality in rooms like this, which is that we don't have a conversation about what is the public campaign angle. And I'm very happy to hear that the Lahore Biennale Foundation's been looking at this, because this is, I think, a really important aspect of this entire campaign that we're overlooking, which is what is the public's role, which is really, you know, for a change in many other human rights campaigns that I worked on, they didn't really care if somebody was actually being executed or killed or whatever. They care about this. And I think we're missing an opportunity, we're missing the boat on that as well, because now we're also sort of going into a cycle which is, oh, it's, you know, smog season's about to come and everybody's got their air purifiers and they're just kind of dealing with it. So I would be curious to hear, you know, what the experts in this room about it, what they think about, and why it hasn't really figured that much in the work that's being done, the public angle. Thank you.
Yeah, Shatari, you want to take that?
Yeah, thanks for your comments. And I think, so to sort of bring up, you know, bring all the conversations together, but maybe before that, I think there are two approaches, right, that we have been talking about. One is reduction of emission and sort of bringing down the air pollution levels. And that's a sort of a very sort of policy coordinated approach that one has to take. But in a more short term or immediate term, and right, an action that may sort of directly benefit, you know, wide range of distribution of socioeconomic status, is providing information and like letting people adapt to the current climate of air pollution. And this is really sort of what our work is focused on. And I think, right, this is more of a proposal maybe to the floor, is that, right, at the moment, I think there's a fairly limited amount of information that a general public can access and access very easily. So for instance, EPD has like great monitors, but one has to like log in to their website and like look at the PDF to get the daily readings. And I think, you know, the urban unit monitors and we have been working together very closely, and they have really high grade monitors, but I think, you know, there's more to be done about dissemination of information. And I think there's concerns around like how to share this information and sort of data privacy and the public perceptions that come with it. And our approach has been to basically take the information and create a forecast as opposed to the actual readings and sort of fight over what is the truth, right? And I think it's more proactive and sort of forward-looking approach in a sense that what we care about ultimately is how we adapt to this new environment and what kind of most useful information we can provide. So I think our approach, we think that there's a sort of world in which providing forecasts might be more politically sort of salient to all parties, and is just in fact more useful for folks to make actual decisions that Mohammed has alluded earlier as well as to what to do tomorrow and on margins that they can affect. And as work by Sanval and others have pointed out, people do also have fairly high willingness to pay or demand for other forms of adaptation mechanisms such as high filtration masks. And these are not as costly as a sort of fancy air purifier that people in higher income sort of status levels can afford, but this is something that's fairly more affordable for a wider range of folks.
Yeah, go ahead, Nazish.
So one of the things that that SEED tried to do in order to address this issue was that we tried to have a sharper clear alliance, and we set it up with members, there are lawyers, there are people from the media, and so on. And we were hoping that that alliance would play the role of educating people. Once we've got the research in place, once we've got the policy advocacy, that was work that SEED was doing with government. But in terms of educating people and getting those civil society interventions in place, because air pollution, all of us contribute to it. So all of us who drove in with just one person in the car this morning, I mean, we were not very environmentally friendly. If you go to developed countries, you will see that in their cities, there is constant signaling, and there is already that change in mindset. On the food menus, there are several vegetarian or vegan sort of a plant-based options available. In terms of public transport, all of the regulation, the pricing, the attitudes, all of it has already shifted towards people not having plastic bottle. Everyone carries their own bottle. So that mindset has happened. We were hoping that the Clean Air Alliance would do that. So there were some things that they were great at doing. So every time we had a report or we had an intervention, putting it out in the media, generating that kind of debate, getting the visibility amongst government to see those results and notice them, we did very well at. But at the end of the day, and I've had several conversations with Qudsiya on this, because their organization is much more effective. I think the people who are part of that organization are willing to put in their individual effort. We didn't have that same experience. And we also had a situation where, everyone is responding in their individual capacities. So when our data, our network of air quality monitors came online, we were still in conversation about the kind of things that you spoke about, right? That data is very, very sensitive, and our network was coming online exactly when we were at peak smog levels. The levels were so bad that the monitors had to be recalibrated for Peshawar. Those monitors were not giving us accurate readings because they're not designed for those levels of air pollution. And at that time, somebody sort of jumped the gun. We were working with government to sort of make sure that the messaging comes up in a very collaborative format, that this is seen as a government intervention. It's something that the EPD is doing and supporting in order to improve air pollution in Peshawar. But when that kind of scathing article from a member of PCA came out, EPD immediately reacted by shutting down the network. It was a shoot the messenger. And वो जो आप कह रहे थे कि वो boat capsize हमारी हो गई, boat capsize काफी महीनों के लिए वो capsized रही. It took us so much work to get it back online. So I think this kind of, and maybe Qudsiya can speak to this also, how do we sort of make sure that we are working collaboratively, we are on the same page, and how do we involve all of the members of civil society? I mean, this is what we've learned. Challenges behind, there pros and cons, but yeah, be happy.
But it's also interesting how, so point well taken, how this intersects provision of information, how that intersects with social and economic characteristics, because in both our randomized control trials, we had targeted respondents in low middle income areas who did not have access to the EPD website and couldn't access the data. They didn't have smartphones where they could then download IQware and look at PAQI data, etc. But even then, even before giving them the data, they didn't understand what PM is, or didn't even understand what units are, right? Because PM is often measured in micrograms per meter cube. So we had to, like, before conducting a baseline surveys, we had to go in and then hand these pamphlets to the respondents, which actually, like, in these pamphlets translated in Urdu, which basically described exactly what PM is, and we had to contextualize it. We had to show them, like, what our local and sort of international standards are, and our enumerators, or Muhammad's enumerators, effectively went through the pamphlet with these respondents in detail. And it's only after people started internalizing exactly what the issue is and what PM 2.5 really means, that's when we started seeing these kind of high values or willingness to pay for our forecasting product and particular filtering masks, etc. So adaptation and avoidance is really sort of the second side of the coin, right? Because a lot of the conversation centers around mitigation, but avoidance and how citizens respond to the challenges is important. Mohammed, do you want to add to that?
Mentioned about of these citizens was that this is a हवा छोड़ के कहाँ जाए. So he thinks that there's nothing that can be done, and everything that is being done is actually solutions created by people who can afford it. One, there's a notion that there are clean air quality areas within Lahore, which are expensive properties. And secondly, you have to buy these air purifiers, which the people we went to, they certainly do not afford. So the first reaction is that this is something that cannot be done by us. So what if we know what the air pollution index is going to be like? What benefit it is to us that PM 2.5 is going to be this tomorrow or tomorrow, day after tomorrow. So educating people and explaining them what it means and what can be done specifically within their means is very important, I think.
Yeah. We have a series of hands. So, yeah.
I'm Shahana Khurshid. There are a couple of, I am a faculty in chemical engineering over here. Seeing some of the science made me ask, with the source apportionment, why are there differences between the FAO studies and the percentages shown over here? I'm a little surprised at that, because the FAO studies warrant about 40% of emissions are due to industries, about 40% to transport, and about 20 to crop burning and such. But that's more for, and I can have this conversation later on. But if in fact transport contributes more than 80% to air pollution, then this was a follow-up to this earlier discussion. हमने गाड़ियों की व्हीकल्स को रिटायर करने के ऊपर नई पॉलिसीज इन प्लेस कर रहे हैं, लेकिन इंडस्ट्रीज को तो बैन्स, स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज पे डेफिनेटली बैन्स इन प्लेस हो गए हैं, विच इज़ वाई देयर इज़ अ मूव, like sort of a demand from those industries to have some sort of air pollution control devices put on their exhaust streams so that they're emitting less pollutants, so that they go back into operation and not have the operational the losses. So that has happened, no matter how many difficulties with EPD, government secretaries changing and stuff. Industries के ऊपर ban शुरू हो गया है. But if in fact transport is contributing much more, वो वाला, why has that been harder to do?
You respond first and then I'll follow up.
Thank you. First, I would respond to your question, the difference between the proportionate, then I come to the transport sector. Yes, if you are considering the statistical average, sorry, after sorry, 2 to 3 different proportionates of the population. For example, if you are earning 1 lakh and I am earning 2 lakh and the rest of people are earning only 1000. If we average them, is the average is true representative of the income of the each person? The answer will be no, but statistically that makes some sense that you can conclude based on something. Exactly the issue with the proportionate. When you augment the Lahore with the other rest of the Punjab, its proportionate normalize over the entire constituency of the Punjab. So this is why when you isolate the Lahore with the rest of the Punjab, its proportionate shoots up. Why? It is very nicely written in the urban units Lahore inventory that 70% of the fossil fuel is being consumed by the transport department or the transport sector. So when the 70% of the fossils is being consumed by the transport sector, the equally their emissions profile will be. So it is only a litmus test which you can conduct barely with this study. And the remaining is that we have also made some database analytics which suggest that 3 divisions of the Punjab, Lahore, Faisalabad and Gujranwala, these accommodate 45% of the dwellers of the Punjab in these 3 divisions, and 80% of the industry is existed in this area, and more than 50% of the vehicles do ply over the roads in these 3 divisions. One factor. Other, there is only the culprit which we make and easily guess, which is the winter season smog. But unfortunately, there are the other photochemical smogs which are not detected. Those are the product of the some secondary reactions which used to happen in our air chemistry. So for that, sophisticated instruments are needed, though we are still lacking with the primary instrument. Those are needed to be measuring the PM 2.5 and the other primary pollutants are the criteria pollutants, we do name them. Now, I respond, if you want to make some further dig down to these numbers, when we come to the industry, which I told you, the 80% of the is existing in these 3 divisions of the Punjab, more than 90% of the industry is medium to small scale. And then we further dig down into it, only 10% are existing in the designated industrial states. Then what the rest of is doing? It is polluting with the direct engulfing and intruding the residential areas. So this is why the exposure to the residential areas, particularly like the case of northern Lahore, where the bypass of the ring road makes some adjoining, like in Shalamar, Bagbanpura, which our enumerator and the ground level study investigator was telling us that exactly the issue of air quality and its impacts multiplies when the source is closer to the dwellers. So it is one of the factors. And second comes to, yes, it is very open secret that in Motor Vehicles Ordinance 1956, there is a provision to retire the vehicles after certain age. But unfortunately, that is silenced by our decision makers due to any reason. But your point is quite, I would take it as a knee-jerk that if we can ban the industry, why not the transport? I am taking it as a takeaway and will be telling to my higher-ups and the other decision makers that we should also consider it. If we even can't introduce the mass transit system, at least we should take the measures to early retire or even banning, like I was referring the clean air policy. Yes, that has admitted, and during the critical air pollution, even during the winter months, The vehicles more than the 20 years old will be not allowed to enter into Lahore up to the extent of Lahore. Yes, we have admitted this fact and we are going to exercise from this year now.
Mr. Chai, we want to take that question on source apportionment?
No, I didn't want to take that question on source apportionment. No, you know, honestly, I really don't want to take that question because we are getting some type of a pushback because the numbers, you know, diverge a lot. And the idea was to actually generate that type of a pushback so that people start talking about evidence and data. Hassan, if you want to say, you know, something about source apportionment, because I want to talk about why that thing has not happened in transport the way it has happened in the industry. So if you have something to say on the source apportionment.
Is the main issue. But in case of urban units report, it's for the all 36 districts, and that is why the numbers are slightly higher than that of the FAO study. For the whole Punjab. And the other study is for Lahore city.
So we have two sort of, one is the sectoral emission for the entire province and the other is for specifically for Lahore. Obviously Lahore, because it is a, you know, it is a city, transport would, you know, tend to contribute more. You know, in terms of what we can do is, while you can, you know, have a much more firmer regulatory action on industry because industry is not mobile. So somebody is not going to drive away with their firm and change their position. Vehicles are mobile, number one. They are obviously greater in number. And the third is when it comes to implementation on the ground, one actor that we have not mentioned, and that actor is the most powerful actor as far as transport is concerned, is not the EPD, it's not the transport department, it's the traffic police. So how they are looking at vehicle, you know, emitting, you know, harmful pollutants in the air, their role would be quite significant. And I have always advocated that they should be given a greater role because the type of enforcement that we need or the type of a switchover that we need in which citizens actually start realizing that I have to change my vehicle, otherwise either it will be impounded or something like that, that thing is not happening. And so you keep on carrying on using the old vehicle or the motorcycle or everything else. Right now the economic situation is also of, you know, such a nature where that happens to be the sole means of transport. The argument goes is that can we provide them an alternative in better effective public transport. So as long as we do not want to provide them that alternative, when it comes to the political level or the policy level at which this decision is going to be made, whosoever is the chief minister, he's going to ask the question that what do we have if we start imposing a stricter regulatory check, which we can do. What would be the impact in as far as alternative modes of transport that would be available to them? Because a smoke emitting motorcycle may be your only sole mode of transport to your place of employment. Now, if that is taken away or impounded, what is going to happen to that? We've already struggled with helmet control. So helmet control is basically you just have to keep on wearing the helmet, but even that is becoming quite a quandary. But the most effective actor on the ground is actually the traffic police. And the traffic police is looking at it from a totally different angle. And I think we have to appreciate that angle also, is can we do something about traffic management as such, or the flow of traffic, which we've really not looked into, that at least that this level of emission can be reduced or contained. While I really think that the regulatory aspect in having a switchover, so people start bringing off-road all those vehicles that they feel as citizens they are likely to be, likely to be sort of caught up in a regulatory enforcement. That is simply not there, and the government intentionally does not want to do that, because if we cannot provide an alternative, it is just very difficult to start impounding motorcycles and vehicles.
Before we wrap up, Umar, right? So we're Umar, Sara, and Sabah. We just have to, yeah. Just do it in a minute, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Opinion on this is slightly different. The biggest actor which can clean up the transport sector is the petroleum division in the federal government, and it's not the traffic police. Because vehicle inspection certification, taking on traffic, if you check a vehicle right now, literally every vehicle in Lahore will fail that test. Because you've upgraded the emission standards to Euro 5, but you do not have Euro 5 fuel in the country. So literally every vehicle in this country will fail that certification, no matter how big the sample is. So until Petroleum Division enforces a regulation that says that only Euro 5 diesel or petrol will be available in Lahore, Peshawar, Karachi, this cannot be changed. The alternative is that you spend $10 billion and set up a refinery locally which provides that fuel, but again, the economic angle that we do not have that money. So in my opinion is that vehicle certification hasn't happened because everyone knows that they will fail that test. The government knows, the regulator, the Export Development Board, which has the authority of setting your engine vehicle standards, knows that they will fail this test. And vehicle retirement, again, as you've said, everyone will be failing the test, so you cannot retire the entire fleet. So at the end of the day, we have to really try to look into how provinces and particularly certain localities can enforce their own petroleum regulations. Because that is how it has happened everywhere else, that there is a region which is more polluted and it comes ahead and says that we're going to have the highest regulations possible. Los Angeles did it, New York did it, Delhi did it, Beijing did it. They enforced the local standards to be much higher, but because since these were the biggest markets, your OMCs, your refineries, all of them came in and started supplying that market with the required fuel. And eventually the entire country had to keep up with those standards as well. So in the coming years, before anything that can happen, I think all the provinces need to sit down with of course, the federation and decide how the areas which have peak pollution, particularly Lahore, Peshawar, these particular regions, these divisions need to be supplied with Euro 5 imported diesel. There's no other way around it.
Okay, Umar, Sara, and Sabah. Abid Saab, waqt bada kam reh gaya. Can I take your question in the next session? Okay, but why don't you, can you just quickly make them comments? And I also want to welcome Dr. Pervez Hassan, who has just joined us, and he's going to be addressing us in the next session. So welcome, Dr. Saab.
Yeah, thank you, Saul. Umar Mukhtar, I'm team lead for Sustainable Energy and Economic Development Program, which is based in Peshawar. So I have this unique honor of living in the most polluted city in the world and work in the fifth most polluted city in the world. So what amazes me is that we have all discussed and the data shows, and I was a bit amazed by that even in Lahore, 84% of the pollution comes from transport. But as probably Dawar mentioned, that there are some steps which can be taken, which our Umar Saab or our colleague from EPD may be working on. But even those simple steps are not taken for the politics which we are probably not talking about. I think air pollution has become a major political issue. Even we see Mayor of London running his whole campaign around air pollution, but here we don't see that kind of debate generated on a public level. I mean, Rimal talked about, Nazish talked about public advocacy. So we did some advocacy in Peshawar, and we established a Peshawar Clean Air Alliance on the pattern of Lahore Binale, which was not as successful, but still a combination of academics, researchers, doctors, parents from Peshawar, so that we are able to push this agenda forward. But where we are now coming a bit against a blind wall is what to do next kind of thing. That okay, we know that transport is the biggest polluter. Why will we keep on running around stubbles and industries for that matter, but what are we really doing about transport? I remember a study which actually said that chingchis and rakshas are among the transport are the major contributors or the diesel traffic. Can we do something about it? Can we do alternate days for these traffic? Now, my interest is, I mean, in both of these cities, but I also look at Peshawar. Peshawar is frankly 3 million or 4 million against 20 million of Lahore, and still we are the fifth most polluted city in the world. And Peshawar is actually around one main road, the GT road. Lahore is much more complex. So Peshawar probably we can have some easy solution on that GT road. So that were some of the thoughts which were going through. Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah, then Sabah. Yeah.
To sort of stress on. One is, and I think both of them are umbrella arguments that need to be weighed in no matter what policy we're discussing or what solution we're discussing. One, that we tend to work in silos. So government departments they keep delegating responsibility or they don't want to interact with other departments. The same with civil society. If civil society is taking a stand, the government isn't backing it. And so for any successful sort of policy or initiative, we do need some kind of collaboration to strengthen and to make it successful, something that always gets bypassed when you're working on the field and when you're actually pitching some kind of solution. And the second is a shift in narrative. I mean, I think we're all sort of harping around the same subject where we're saying we need sustainable solutions, we need, just Raino ne kaha ki, you need an alternative form of transportation. But what we need a narrative where air pollution is a priority, and not just for the government, but also expressed as a priority or pitched as a priority for civil society and for the man on the Clapham omnibus. They need to be told that health and air pollution are linked. They need to be told that education and air pollution are linked, because jab aap unse baat karte ho, like a motorcyclist, if I spoke to some motorcyclists last year, they had skin rashes, they had burning in their eyes, but they said, "Asi kam te jana hai." So wohi baat hai, you have to tell them that your health and your school and your work, they're all interlinked, and that's the narrative shift, a priority shift that we need to sort of propagate.
I'll just add on what is being discussed here. I think one of the comment is about the communication or something. So being working at the urban unit, we are directly linked with the government sector. So I would really want to highlight that the government is working a lot in terms of education and training. And PRMP and MPDD has also introduced a subject. So you were talking about the vocabulary and all these things. So I think, yeah, we are doing some kind of efforts, and we do have an academy, Al Jazari Water and Sanitation Academy. So we do have trainings for the government sector on the air quality, heat wave management, and the climate side. So this is not that there's nothing is happening. So there's something which is now have been changed recently in the government sector, so people are now more sensitized towards it. On the second side, I think we really need to understand when we talk about the transport sector and specifically about the fuel, then it becomes a federal subject. It's not something like waste burning, okay, we can handle it locally. Industries, okay, there is some district level or the local level. But when it comes to fuel, we need a federal intervention to come to the euros, and we need to see that how the refineries can be upgraded, which will require, billions of rupees and a number of years. What we have estimated, at least 7 years are required if we talk about कि अच्छा हमें green fuel की तरफ जाना है. So we really need to think that these things are become complex, and when it becomes the federal subject, then we can see the huge gap in between. Low sulfur policy is there, and they are working on कि आपने you have to improve your euro, come to the euro 4 and 2 and all that. But the issue is that we do not providing them the platform to do that. In that way, the adulteration of the fuel is also very common when the government started with this SRO and all that. So people started to using that. They don't have any other options, so they started to use manganese. So to lower to increase the octane number. And when it comes to manganese, we don't have even the environmental quality standards for that. And we cannot, bother to estimate that how much another kind of pollutants we are producing through this adulteration process. So I think that's when it comes to transport, it's very, very complex, and the efforts are required at every level to come up with the right solution on it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabah. Abid Saab is my old friend. I cannot leave him hanging, so I'll let him have the last word here. Yeah.
I have two comments. One was about our narrative is more emphasizing on the information dissemination. Probably the regulatory element is needs more emphasis in the policy, and then there is a tension between a certified equipment and not certified equipment, because all the literature suggests the non-certified or low-cost sensors can only be used for information and education, not for the regulatory purpose. The second part of my observation is that there is a very strong happening since 5 years is a Water and Judicial Commission, which is really looking at the environment and water issues in Lahore and instructed, and there is a smog action plan. So probably some more research is required in that area to see in 5 years the interventions proposed by the Commission, how they are impacting the environment of Lahore. So these were my observation and comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Abid Saab. And that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much. We'll now take I want to thank all the speakers for their wonderful presentations, and to everybody else for engaging in this dialogue. We'll just take a quick 5-minute stretch break and then start off with the second session. Oh, and there's tea and snacks on the table there.